Those of y'all who are tuning in, we are back with Column Conscious. I am Donovan Bush. I'm the associate editor of Yanta Magazine, and I am here with, you can introduce yourself, just give a basic synopsis of who you are and what you do.
Word. My name is Kala. My full name, Ariana Kala Brain, representing my project Kala and the Lost Tribe. The Lost Tribe is an acknowledgement of my ancestors that walk with me, my spirit guides that move with me in day-to-day life. And it's also an acknowledgement of us as right now living future ancestors. So it's a reminder of the responsibility that we'll also have to the next generations coming along to also be a guide from the other side. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. I am an artist, musician, MC, educator. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's where I'm at.
That's what's up. Kala, I want to get the pronunciation
Yes,
right.
perfect. Yep.
Kala, thank you so much for coming by. And also kind of touching on like the future ancestors part, because I think that's something that like even like some of the most progressive of us like forget is that like what we're trying to do, there is a chance we will never see that liberated future in our lifetime. So it's incentive that we fight hard and that we organize so that when we are the ancestors, our children or our relatives or the children of people decades or even centuries from now can have an earth that is habitable, that is fresh, that is clean, that is clean.
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
little sprinkle of outcasting, but you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like,
Love
but
it.
like, I remember briefly like kind of skimming through. It was a Substack, of basically just like the premise of it was I forgot the name, but the premise of it was basically whenever you have kids, it's like when you if you say that you're in a fight for liberation, you need to ask yourself that by the time your kids are born, will they see you as the oppressor? Your
Mm.
goal, your goal should be to make sure your kids don't see you as the oppressor. Of like, well, if the world is like objectively worse now, you decide to have a kid. Well, what did you do to help make sure the world was like better? You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Like,
Mm.
if I want to, if I have kids sit down with me and God forbid or higher power forbid, universe forbid, that it's on even more on fire than it was in my young life or in my current standing. If
Mm-hmm.
my kid or kids want to ask, I'm like, hey, what did you do to try to make things better? I'm like, well, yeah, I organized. I created like alternative or Marianne would call like dual and contending media against the
Mm-hmm.
state.
Mm-hmm.
Like I talk to comrades, talk to artists, culture workers like you, like I and the
Mm-hmm.
Lost Tribe and many other folks I've had on here. Like I can put down or I can describe to future generations. This is what I did to try to counter the narrative that we just have to sit here and let things get worse. So I really appreciated when I was reading your bio for the first time that that was something that you decided to specifically focus on. Could you touch on that a
Mm-hmm.
little more?
In terms of specifically like the Lost Tribe and that
Yeah,
responsibility. Yeah, and even the Lost Tribe is poetry. Sometimes I confuse people when I say the Lost Tribe because and I've had people think it's connected to like the Lost Tribe of what is it, Lost Tribe of Judah, Lost Tribe of Israel, and that it's like more religious than I mean it to be. That's because that's not what I'm connected to, but it's actually like lost as in found, if that makes any sense. Because
yeah,
in the sense of like any great, even though the super racist, but like an Indiana Jones movie, like the long lost something, right? It's something
right,
that it becomes our intention to find. The when it's lost, the impetus, the motive, the charge is to find it, is to return to it. And
right,
so, in a lot of senses, it is deeply connected to a big tenet in my work, a big motif in my work, which is around Sankofa, the indicative symbol Sankofa, and the charge with that would go back and fetch it. So I think Sankofa is so powerful because not is it a charge of return and reminder, all the re's, the rejuvenation, the restoration, but it acknowledges, I think, such a deep part of healing and trauma is that it acknowledges that something has been lost in the first place. And as a person who has experienced abuse and trauma, which has felt like parts of me got left behind, that's such an important part to say, yeah, something got left, something got lost. And now the charge is to return. Now the charge is to find it. It's very important to me to acknowledge who we walk with, but to also live a certain life that our heirs will want to venerate us as
Yeah,
ancestors. You know what I mean? Because that's also been an important thing is that not all the ancestors need to be venerated. You know, some of them were living foul. Some of them weren't in alignment with what we're doing right now. But that there is a charge and responsibility to live in a righteously so that we are returned to our predecessors' altars. I'm pointing back here. You can't see us off camera, but like my ancestors who are on my altar. You know what I mean? It's like, and to be fair, room for nuance. This is not talking about perfection. Perfection isn't real. That's not a real thing. Maybe the only thing that's
branded like
perfect.
it is. It
What'd you
definitely
say?
branded. It'll definitely brand it like it's a real thing.
Absolutely. And it's like maybe the only, and not that obviously we are made up of nature, and it's like maybe the only thing that's really perfect is Mother Nature, and people will still miss the fact that like Mother Nature in her perfection is destruction, is a complete breaking down of something, is a complete regeneration, is the nuance. You know, people like to, I saw a conversation around trans women in sports the other day. We started talking about biology, and it was like, but biology is male and female, and it was, and you know, it's like it mimics the animal kingdom, and it was like, no, it doesn't. You know what I mean? In the animal kingdom, there are animals that change sex or are intersex or you know are queer, you know, or are like no, we don't. We're not. We are mimicking nature more than we think, and people are, you know. But anyway, I'm on a tangent. But in terms of perfection, there's not nobody's perfect. You got to leave room for nuance. So, you know, not that we can't mess up or we can't misstep. That's not real. But there is something that we got to understand. And also it's like how is accountability held so that when we are gone, that we're not only venerated for the work that we did that was really powerful and well, rather all the work that we did that was powerful, that was very clearly, yeah, on point, and the work that was like that we did when it wasn't on point and we needed to get called in, right? As opposed to called out. When we got called in and we were able to hold ourselves accountable, we were able to hold others accountable because that's a big part of this liberatory and revolutionary work as well.
I know, and this act and that like even perfectly ties into one of the first questions I have. And this goes into your most recent album, which is Colors, which is
Mm-hmm.
out on all streaming platforms. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
definitely check it out. It's a dope listen. A question I wanted to ask about the album, the first question I wanted to ask about it was,
Mm-hmm.
what is a new piece of like radicalization that you applied into the construction of Colors?
The most obvious for me was the unapologetic, the fearless inclusion of my sexuality, which was something that when I started making, publicly putting out music, because I've been playing music since I was 6. And I was recording music on the little recorder. You're younger than me, and I like that you asked a question about Gen Z because I am not Gen Z, buddy. I'm about to be 40 next month, but thank you very much for thinking that I might have
Got
been.
a Black August birthday. Happy early birthday.
Yeah. But thank you very much. But back in the day where you had to press the play and record button on the tape recorder on the cassette at the same time, boom, and record. I've been recording music for a long time. But in the publicly putting it out for public consumption, I made a decision 15 years ago to not sexualize myself in my music. I didn't want to be pigeonholed. I didn't want to just be like, oh, that's just a gay rapper. Like it's not hidden by any means in my work. It's not hidden. I mean, what does a queer person look like anyway? But it's not hidden in my presentation into the world. But Colors is the gayest album that I've ever that I ever
Every
put
color of the
out.
rainbow. And this
Yeah, for real. And that's radical. That is really radical. And even I know you had another question coming up, but like Colors, the title track, me and Jenna, we talking about our straps. We're talking about straps, okay? And not pum pums, straight dildo
yeah.
dick straps. We are talking about straps. And it was really scary. But I had to understand that every aspect of my being, and I'm gonna say being because identity, but it's like this is who I am. This is more than a title or a label. But every aspect of my being is politicized, is political. So in my opinion, colors is as political as politics or what y'all really want, and as radical, right? And we know radical gets people to, from the Latin talking about to the root. It goes to the root. We're not just talking about the fruit and the limbs of the tree. I'm going all the way down to the root in terms of this aspect of who I am and how I show up in the world and how I love and who I love and how I find pleasure and what I find erotic and sensual. So for me, without, going too further into like some of the processes of actually creating it, that's got to be the most radical part of this album is thoroughly, unapologetically, fearlessly putting my sexuality fully into the music, putting my full self fully into the music.
And it paid off exceptionally well. Again, please go listen to Colors. This is some dope ass work. And I'm gonna obviously get into that question too, but like just literally how you're able to use that to invert so many of the tropes. I can just tie into it.
Sure.
Like you talk about the title track Colors. You also do it with Jazz You Up as well, and the song Here for You. It's you subvert the misogynist biases within a lot of rap songs by centering black lesbian romantic experiences. In doing so, you are inverting that traditional scenario of um, black male conquest that is churned out, that is mass produced by many a recording a record label, many media conglomerates, and you replace it with black femme sexual gratification. Um, you talked about opening up about your sexuality being the thing the most uniquely radical part of this piece of work. Is this an experience that you just noticed is just missing, like just unapologetic black femme queer like expression? Are you seeing a come up in recent years with more like black femme presenting queer artists producing work? What are your thoughts on some of that stuff?
Word. Well, just a quick clarification in the language. Maybe it's semantics, but it's important. I identify as masculine of center, and
Mm-hmm.
Jenna identifies as gender fluid. We both use she her pronouns. But
My apologies about that. My fault.
no, just no, but just in terms, because femme presenting is a very specific presentation, right? So we both aren't, Jenna can be more fluid in that, but kind of generally there's like a more androgynous or fluid, or and me personally masculine presentation of that. But it's important in answering your question because that's also something that we're subverting. That is unfortunately, because we live in this heteronormative patriarchal society and world, that even our masculinity as women is supposed to come with misogyny. It's supposed to come with a toxic masculinity. And as I mentioned, I'm an educator, and for the past 7 or 8 years that I've been working with young adults at an alternative high school in the West Village, my students are constantly like face cracked when they think or they bring up like young MA, and they think that I'm just going to be in super alignment with young MA because of my presentation of being masculine, because I'm queer and I'm a person who is very attracted to femme women and non-binary people. And they really get confused when I'm like, nah, I don't rock with MA. Like MA is as misogynistic and toxically masculine as her male counterparts. You know, like everybody loves that line, like, which I think is a trash bar as an MC. Like, you call her Stephanie, I call her Heffany. I just think that's a trash bar. But then the very next line is, I don't hold no door for no whore. I just want the neck, nothing more. And it's just like, it's not an original bar. It's not an original sentiment, and it's in complete lockstep with the toxic masculinity that exists, right? This isn't an indictment of hip hop. This is about the world. This is
Mhm.
about, our society and the greater world around it. Because I love hip hop. I love hip hop down to my bones, down to the DNA. But so in yes, I think that this is a subversion of how we're showing up, not just of the toxic masculinity in hip hop culture in the world and in the queer community, particularly. I mean, you see, I can't speak to the white, I mean, I can, but not the white queer community, but in the black queer community, there's definitely this issue that shows up very much so between the stud and femme, or the AG and femme dynamic. So we're kicking a lot of that to the side and stepping into that. And I should mention also, because I don't know if you peeped, but you mentioned "Jazz You Up" in that group of tracks that subverts that misogyny. But "Jazz You Up," me and Jenna are both jazz trained piano players, and we are jazz
You
heads.
put that in your bio. I read that about that. You went to music
Yeah,
school.
exactly. Yeah, yep. Sarah Lawrence. I studied music there among other things. Um, jazz piano and jazz drumming. But Jazz You Up is an ode to jazz. And I'm like, I wonder if people, I mean, the jazz heads are gonna catch it, but it was my idea to, because I got that track, and Jenna is the lead producer on all of this stuff. And when she sent me that track, it was called Jazz You Up. And sometimes as the producer, as the artist, you can use that title and see where the producer was going to kind of lead you thematically. But some of them didn't, like for example, the intro track Jenna called Agitation. And we ended up, that was just the name of the beat that she produced. But now it's called Hello, and it has a beautiful poem by Jade Flower Foster on it, right? So agitation wasn't the direction we went with the theme. But for Jazz You Up, we had already been working for a while, and I was like, all right, how am I going to approach this? How do I want to approach this song? And as a jazz head, I challenged myself to write a verse that uses titles of jazz tunes. So the majority of my verse and Jenna's, because I was like, Jenna, I'll write the second verse. And Jenna was super inspired, was like, nah, I got it. I'll write the second verse. The majority of the words in each of our verses are actually titles of jazz songs. So I don't know if like I met Naima on Green Dolphin Street. Those are two tunes. Naima and Green Dolphin Street. We walked 7 steps to heaven, another jazz tune, and her kiss was like a love supreme. That's a whole Coltrane album. My little sunflower. Little sunflower is a tune. Put me in a sentimental mood. Sentimental mood is a jazz standard.
That I
Yeah,
peeped when I was listening. I'm like,
yeah.
sentimental. I'm like, I'm listening to this.
Yeah, in a sentimental mood. There's one bar with outside of like one or two other words, like at last, I'm feeling good, like it's April in Paris. At last is the Etta James. I'm feeling good. Nina Simone, April in Paris, jazz standards. These are just, but so I say all that to say, not to just pat myself on the back, because I think it's a brilliant idea. But we're also not just subverting the hyper masculinity of hip hop culture, but that tune also is subverting the hyper masculinity of jazz culture, not just it back in the day, but in the current state of it. Like to exist as a woman in the world is one thing. To exist as a woman in hip hop is another. How people are going to expect you to show up, and then also how you show up in the jazz community. There's a lot that goes on there as being a woman, right? So, and a black woman at that, black queer woman at that, and a black masculine queer woman at that. So there's a lot of subversion that's happening in groups of tracks. But yeah, we're definitely giving a real middle finger to a bunch of these systems that have been held in place that oppress everybody, not just women. And I'm sure I know you're aware, even just in this short conversation, I know that you're hip to the fact that like misogyny oppresses everybody. Patriarchy oppresses everybody. It puts men in a very limited box that they're allowed to exist in terms of their pleasure, their strength, the way that their sensitivity, the way they're able to process the world, the way that they're able to interact with other men, the way that they're able to interact with women, their mothers, their fathers. Everybody loses when we participate in these systems.
Yep, and they continue to be legitimized as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. And then breaking down the bars too. I was hoping that you would break down a little something, something for us. So
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate you took the time to do that. A bonus question as well,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll probably get to this later too. Like, how does like your previous stuff that you stated tie or connect to a like Black revolutionary politic, this subverting of so many things that we just inherently just kind of just assume are parts of, like, whether it be hip hop, whether it be jazz, whether it just be like everyday existence. How do you connect that to like a Black revolutionary politic?
From my study and engagement with the practice and the praxis, a big tradition has seemed to me, from what I'm still learning and understanding, is that Black revolutionary tradition has always studied global, yeah, international revolutionary tradition. And not always, sometimes it didn't always get right there, but there comes a time I find there's like a crux, there's a crossroads in a lot of different places in individuals and in organizations where they see that the intersections are really important, right? To make space. Like I see now a lot of people, we're talking about a proletariat. I mean, it's not new, right? But it's new for a lot of people. Like looking at the proletariat class, looking at the working class as a group of people beyond color, creed, sexuality, gender, right? But understanding a bigger movement. And like young Fred Hampton was doing out in Chicago, like the Rainbow Coalition, like that was really, really powerful work, and a really powerful understanding. So I think that by connecting the dots, we are upholding, maintaining, furthering Black revolutionary tradition.
No, that's what's up. The next question I want to ask, kind of going back into like the proletariat thing, obviously capitalism has had a major influence in the way that we not just how music is consumed, but also how music is allowed to be produced and whether
Mm,
which tracks are circulated as well. Who is allowed to have their music played in the airwaves, or who,
yeah,
as well as who's allowed to benefit from like streaming and stuff like that. Obviously, Spotify, like media channels like Spotify have made it to where you can only maybe get a few cents a stream, where in order to make some real money, you got to get like a million streams to actually see some
yeah,
money happen to your account.
yeah.
And so, for the question I wanted to ask was that in what ways have you seen how capitalism has impacted the way music is produced, circulated, consumed? And then what unique challenges does capitalism pose to independent artists, or artists who don't have a record label, who can funnel in thousands of dollars for advertising and stuff like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, you're answering I mean, I guess I'm starting backwards at the addendum question, but like that's the biggest thing is that it takes money to make money. It takes that was a big thing I learned in the last project, the very first Art of Balance, and then the last my project Medicine Music, that I had a smaller budget to put into putting out promoting videos on YouTube, and I saw the difference that like a few $100s made in getting views and engagement and subscribers up. It disillusioned me, and it brought me out of a bit of, I guess, naivete that almost seems like silly. It was like, duh. But when you have, like, if I put $300 behind a video and got 8,000 views on a video, I went, all right, so then if people are putting $1,000 on a video, if people are putting three, if they're a bigger artist on a bigger label, they're putting 10K, they're putting 50K on a video or on a project, the way that gets that pushed. And it doesn't say a damn thing to the quality of or caliber of the music. And I know that's also kind of a philosophical discussion because I remember talking about that in high school in a music philosophy class. Like, what is good music, right? There's like preference involved, but then there's also like real theory involved in that. But at the same time, there is something that speaks to the caliber. What are you saying? How are you saying it? What's the quality of the production? Are you doing something unique? Are you copy and pasting? And my lower viewership says nothing about the quality or caliber of what I'm putting out. It speaks to my marketing budget. It speaks to being an independent artist who's a teacher, who's hustling and gigging in different ways and putting at times almost every cent I can into something. And it's a little. It's not very much at all. But it speaks to the fact that I don't have some big label budget and I don't have all the money in the world to put behind something and get the views and get the traction on a video that now makes all that engagement make me pop up on somebody's For You page or on a YouTube homepage. You know what I mean? And that's the big thing. And I remember reading a statistic, it might have been 2024, 2023, 2024, that maybe in 2023, Nike had spent $4 billion globally, $4 billion globally on advertising. And we're slated to spend $6 billion the next year on advertising and global marketing. And that's Nike. That's Nike. So, and that doesn't speak to the quality. You know, I bought some J's, I bought some, I could see the glue, I could see the semen. We know how much those shoes are made for. We know the modern day slave labor and indentured servitude that goes into making these products, right? So it doesn't speak to the quality. It's not like this is the best leather, the best rubber in the world, whatever. But it speaks to the fact that Nike, to stay on top, is spending billions of dollars a year to stay in the collective consciousness, to stay in the lane of we're the best, you're gonna want us. This is some type of status symbol. This means you got taste. This means you got money. This means you have value by consuming our products, right? There's way better burgers out there than McDonald's, but McDonald's is throwing ad sales, so much money at us, right? For all of that. There's a lot better artists. You could pick any that there's a lot better artists than some of the artists we hear on the radio all the time, but the money is getting thrown out there. Payola is still alive and well. People are still paying for plays. People are still dumping money into getting their views up and getting their plays up. That's a real thing. So it does put you in a place where as an independent artist, I know this sounds so cliche, but it's like you gotta be doing this shit for the love. You gotta be doing it for the love. It's doing something to heal me. I've said it many times before. But music has saved my life so many times. It's a active lifesaver for me. And so I engage with it, and I've never been shallow or superficial in what I want to say and how I want to say it since I was a kid writing poetry. It's always been a conduit for healing, expansion, growth, self-reflection, reflection on things happening in the world. And, of course, me and Jenna would love this project to blow up. When Medicine Music dropped, me and my collaborator, co-producer David Frazier Jr., who plays drums with me still, and is a great plays with a lot of people, fantastic drummer, fantastic producer. Like, we wanted that John to blow up. You know what I mean? It's like, but when I say blow up, you also have to identify to let me put it this way to tie into your question. In this capitalistic society and in this system, how do you engage as an independent artist? You have to define success for yourself. What does success mean? Because society is telling you success means one thing. It's obviously very much so tied to celebrity, fame, and wealth, but you have to define success for yourself, and you have to be willing to just stay engaged just for the love and for what it's doing for you and for the people. Like, you told me that your roommate was like, that's success. Your roommate fucking with it, you fucking with it, success. That's success. The people that are listening and engaging, that's success. If we hopefully it gets heard enough that we get we book some gigs off of it, success. And also direct people to the Bandcamp, because you said about the streams getting pennies for streams, fractions of pennies for streams. Go to the Bandcamp, buy it for $9. That $9 will, minus a little bit of a Bandcamp fee. I might get like $7.63 from that. But that $7.63 would take thousands and thousands of streams to get me $7.63 back into my wallet. So I hope I answered your question.
Awesome, awesome. And then yeah, and then also expect the band camp to be in the video as well. If you check out the link of the video, there will be a link to the band camp. You can listen to the album for yourself. Um, this actually kind of segues into one of the other questions, and it's about the song "What Y'all Really Want." It is a standout track off of the album. I want to say in the first half before the interlude, or maybe the second half. But it's interrogating the many unaddressed biases within the Black revolutionary spaces, specifically how misogyny, homophobia, and ableism are all just addressed in the song. And I wanted to ask this question, and I'm surprised in the original sheet I didn't put it in. But it was
Mhm.
basically just a what were some of the moments that culminated into creating a song that was so critical, but it was clearly out of love for the struggle. You really have a love, and you clearly are fighting for a necessity for Black liberation. But you also sense that there's elements in this struggle that need to be addressed. What was inspiring you to make a track like this?
Our lived experience. I mean, I know that's like it's a seems obvious and self-explanatory, but our lives, going from different community organizing meetings, events, actions, and really being about the liberation of all Black people and being in these spaces and literally coming home to my block, coming home to my neighborhood, or at my partner's neighborhood, walking hand in hand and getting all the looks from everybody, from the aunties, from the uncles, from the young men, the old men, the everybody, and getting the comments, getting the scowls, getting the vitriol, and understanding that obviously I'm not just fighting for myself. I'm not just fighting for the liberation of the people who are just, Black, queer, masculine women, and queer, like everybody, all of us. And that's when that distinction had to get made years ago for people that it wasn't self-explanatory to them to say Black Lives Matter, that all Black lives matter. We're not picking and choosing here. And really just lived experience, and not even contemporary experiences, lifelong experiences. And as you get deeper into the movement, and it becomes, I mean, it's always critical, right? Angela Davis, freedom is a constant struggle. Like it's all we've kind of always been at critical moments. I don't know when we haven't been. Sometimes when it feels more dire, when we're in a situation where the level of consciousness, mass consciousness around multiple enduring genocides are going on right now. That there's a opening up, an expansion happening, that we're again just critical. We're at a point break moment. So it just felt important. And I think that track particularly came out of a conversation that Jenna and I had in the studio that day. Sometimes we walked into the studio with our tracks, with our verses and choruses and things ready to go, and sometimes we didn't. We just, all right, well, what we doing today, Pinky? Or same thing as every day, Brain. We're gonna take over the world or whatever. I don't know, Animaniacs. I don't know if that's maybe that's an old reference, but
I know what
okay,
Animaniacs is.
okay, okay.
I've seen episodes as a kid. Hold on.
Word. All right. My bad.
You
But
good.
yeah, but that one just came out of some conversation and experiences, and we just felt like there's a place to really put our finger on this right there. And yeah, that's to be honest too, I thank you for calling that track out and calling it a standout track, because for me, that's probably my favorite verse I might have ever written, ever. And I think I've written some really dope verses. But in terms of my level of like craftsmanship with the pen, I said what I wanted to say, exactly how I wanted to say it. And I think it's profound. That sounds so egotistic. It's like totally not my vibe, but I did my big one with that. It's like probably my favorite verse I've ever written.
And that's awesome. You can feel, and I could feel it in the track too. Like I could feel a unique. It really felt like you analyzed like so much stuff from movement spaces, and it's like if you could just address everybody, like it's just like if you just had a few moments just to say something, you just said it. You said it in your full honesty, and I think it's that brutal honesty that isn't just necessary for liberation movements to live up to their ideals and to continue the struggle, but it's also as sonically speaking helps make a track stand out and make an impact on the folks beyond just like, oh, the production is nice, or oh,
Mm-hmm.
I can just vibe with this. No, you're being forced to listen to this
Mm.
perspective. Speaking of sonically and musically speaking, the question I want to ask too is that the album is described as, and I quote, a sonic ode to the golden era of mid 90s hip hop. I know we briefly talked about Spotify, platforms like Spotify, finding new ways to exploit the art of musicians. And so I wanted to ask, why was it necessary to look to the golden age as a source of inspiration?
I'm about to be 40 in August. I grew up, I was what, 10, 11, I was in what would that have been? I guess between 10 to 14, 15, between in the mid 90s. And that's the era I grew up on. That's the era of hip hop that I really fell in love with. And at the same time, had to contend with the fact that I wasn't really in the music, that I potentially had to betray parts of myself to enjoy it and to participate. At that time, and even, the late 80s and things, when there was an emergence of female MCs, nobody was openly queer. We had Queen Latifah, but Queen Latifah didn't come, that was like everybody knew, but not until what was that, 4 or 5 years ago, that at an award show she actually like came out, and that was a big thing, for her and for people seeing that, queer people of all genders seeing that. So to be at an age and era of music in terms of just that like raw sample driven boom bap, but to put ourselves into it, I think was really important. I off of a track off of Medicine Music, a track called Warrior Spirit, and it made me think when you were talking earlier, we were talking about FD Signifier and you being, listening to other like Black consciousness talks or video essays. I have a bar in Warrior Spirit. Like she loved the jazz and the blues and the boom boom bap, but even the most conscious was misogynist in they rap. There was still plenty of homophobia from the cats I love, like Mos Def, for FK, formerly known as Mos Def, or Talib, or even fuck KRS-One, you know what I mean? Even the cats, the Poor Righteous Teachers, as a group from Trenton area where I grew up, that, with that conscious hip hop. But even to play devil's advocate to myself, to quote Mos Def, he has a bar, stop with the nonsense, like he conscious. I'm just awake, dog. I'm feeling great, dog. Like not everybody would even give themselves that label or identity, but right, it's just something where I didn't see myself in the music. And that's such a powerful place for how cadentially the cadence that's going on. Because now it's like kind of cool to not be in the pocket when you rhyme, which I still don't know how I feel about. And my students get mad when I'm like, "Oh, you on that blue face flow?" They be like, "Shut up, I'm like, "Nah, you ain't on the beat, my friend. Like, find the beat, find the pocket. You can find it." But it seems, but just the era of production, cadence, like lyrical cadence, and content, we put ourselves back into that. So I guess just a necessity because we had to get there. And the answer, I feel like it's also important when you speak about Spotify, because Jenna and I had a series of conversations around our music not being on Spotify because of all the bullshit that they've been on in the past couple of years, and um promoting for the IOF, and uh getting trying to get people to sign up for all, the police, all the ads and things that they've been running, and just the general exploitation, and the connection of Spotify's owner to sending money to the IOF and things like that. We were like, nah, let's not do that. And it just so happened that when I was uploading the project through my distributor, that I and it was like late. We were tired. There's so much going on as an independent artist. You totally turn into a label. You turn into a single person or two people who are turning into a record label. And there was just so much going on. And I remember after I hit submit on my distributor website, I realized, oh, they didn't give me the option of which streaming platforms I chose. And so I realized that I was like, if we want it off Spotify, we're going to have to just take our Spotify's down. And a few days ago, Jenna and I had an important conversation based off in a conversation she had with one of her comrades, that like we're gonna do our best to exploit Spotify and use it as a platform to get our music heard, just the way that they're kind of exploiting the artists here, right? And it is a way, like Bandcamp is a place where people are going to go and they really want to show love. That's like really like for the fans that know about us. But Spotify is a good place to get playlist placements where people that don't know about us. It is a really good place to get plays and to get eyes and ears, ears on our music. We decided, all right, let's use them. Let's use them. They're using us. Let's use them. And so we're gonna see how that goes over the next bit of time. But we're very aware. Like I said, go to the Bandcamp, buy the project off Bandcamp. Sure, stream it, find us. We'll get playlist placements through Spotify. You can find us there. But then ultimately, and these are more conversations Jenna and I need to have, is like, how do we flip that now? All right, you heard about us on Spotify. Now, how do we turn you into a fan and funnel you in the opposite direction in a way that's really gonna impact us as artists and performers?
That's dope. That's dope. So yeah, let me. I was gonna say like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said all streaming platforms because it was
No,
obvious.
yeah, nah, it's everywhere. I mean, people are still really tapped into Spotify, but it's on Apple,
I
it's
know
on
some
Tidal,
person.
it's on
Yeah,
Qobuz. Qobuz is the one that I would really,
that was the one I was gonna say. Deleted my subscription from Spotify and instead I went to Koba specifically because I learned that they gave more share to the artists. So
yeah,
now that's how I've just been consuming my music was through Qobuz. Now I'm like,
beautiful.
if Qobuz decided to add an audiobook feature, did the same thing with like book authors, oh, I would never come back. I would never go back to them.
Yeah.
But like, but like, no, and it's just like it's fascinating. We're gonna get to the obvious Gen Z question because I asked this about all from all of our interviewees or all the people that I interview with the magazine just about the Gen Z questions, but just like how normalized it has become for my generation to just like think twice or to at least challenge the notion that we just have to consume this because it's everywhere, because it's so like popularized, because it's so accessible, because it's so convenient. Like
Mm,
I'm not gonna have a PlayStation 5 right behind me. Qobuz
mm-hmm,
isn't on PlayStation 5. You have
mm-hmm,
Spotify, you have Apple Music. Well,
mm-hmm,
two major music streaming corporations, so on and so forth. And
mm-hmm,
so like the initial reaction is that, oh, because it's convenient for me to like just have, because it's on my console, I might as well just have Spotify Premium when I could just be like, or I could just have my computer or my lap or my tablet just play some
mm-hmm.
music and then I can play the game and do stuff like that too. It's an
Right,
extra step, but like
right.
it does something. And so
Yeah.
like um to kind of add to your point, or just kind of add to the kind of add to the point, just like one, glad that you brought up Qobuz. Two, like the necessity of Bandcamp, because Bandcamp has been the ally to many of our favorite artists, because it was the way for many of them to finally come up, was that you can only access them through Bandcamp or maybe YouTube. in like the 2010s when the mixtape and in a lot of these younger independent artists, many of them more established now, they had to just put themselves out there. Have a few
Yep.
folks watch a YouTube video, go on Bandcamp and discover who they are. So no, I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you bringing it up. The question I want to ask too, you brought up
Mm-hmm.
multiple times that you're from the NYC, which is currently being led by the mayor Zoran Mamdani.
Yeah.
I just kind of get a reaction. Like, what emotions would you attribute to the current climate of New York City since he's taken office?
I'm gonna speak generally. There's a certain excitement. I feel like there was generally there was like a sigh of relief. And then obviously there were people that were really afraid. I mean, you saw, national news had it, so scared that, young Muslim, socialist, was now
In
mayor of New York.
in quotes.
I guess, hold on. I just showed my opinion. I said I wasn't going to say my
No, no,
opinion.
no, no. Oh no, oh no. But you've seen our stuff. We've seen our stuff.
Yeah,
It's like, this social
absolutely.
democrat, social democrat. It's
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
you ain't gotta be afraid to say that kind of stuff. We talk about
Nah,
all.
nah. Yeah, nah, never afraid, but just mindful. I mean, and then shit, let me know, because I started talking about the nuance of all of this stuff and leaving room for nuance. I have a lot of comrades, myself included, who are very, very critical of him and what's going on, and weren't fully feeling like, oh yeah, this, I mean, I'm in a school of thought that like no politician is going to be a savior. Like that's where we're playing ourselves by even thinking that. Like I was here when like AOC started blowing up, and there was a lot of excitement around AOC, and then we saw how that shifted, and then, like the
And more
disillusionment
and
and
more
the
into
like.
the establishment.
Yeah, it's just like, God damn, and it's like the pouty face emoji. We were all like, then we were like, okay, Um, so there was a feeling of like not getting super excited. But you're probably hip to Rev Left podcast.
Oh
You ever
yeah,
heard?
I
Yeah,
was listening to them during the pandemic, and like
word.
that was part
I'm
of that
I'm
little radicalization process.
Word. I'm fairly new. One of my blood brothers, one of my big brothers put me on specifically to a we had been talking about it, and he sent me a podcast specifically talking about the potential. It was before Mamdani won. But talking about I think it was even the host, who I'm blanking on his name of Rev Left, but read an article that was put out by, I believe, an Iranian paper that was actually really powerfully comprehensive and critical of people's reaction to Mamdani, but like looking like he would win or potentially winning, and putting too much emphasis on like, oh, but he's a politician, what can he really do, and leaving this space for him to still move in the ways that he could to affect positive change for working class New Yorkers. And that was an important, not that it, I wouldn't say like just changed my whole opinion, but it opened me up to the nuance of things. But yeah, there has been a lot of positive things. People are like, okay, great, this rent stabilization thing is really big, but it's also like, you said you were going to make buses free. Why aren't buses free yet? And to be fair, right? Okay, one thing at a time. How much can really happen all at once? All right, but like, what about buses? What about the fact that you still have this Zionist, running the NYPD, the commissioner of NYPD? Um, why did people think, like, I seen a comrade post on IG the other day, like, y'all know Zoran was never gonna arrest Netanyahu. Like, what are you talking about? How, like, and the fact that he just put out a post like, my team has looked from every angle and every channel on like how we can do this, and we can't. And it's like, you're being a politician right now, bro, because you knew that. Like, if this was one of the things you were kind of running on, in a sense, that this was like a promise that you were putting out there, like how I got okey doked when I was really excited when Obama was like, I'm gonna close Guantanamo. I was like, oh, this is dope, and it's just like, no, you ain't. No, you didn't. I got really radicalized and disillusioned then. Like that was hard. But
Shout out to
yeah, so
Glenn
that
Ford. He knew it all before.
right for
That's
real.
Glenn Ford. He knew everything before, and and mind you, we're all catching up to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
So,
go ahead.
there's a general shift in feeling, and he's way better than Eric Adams. Eric Adams was, man, oh God, that was wild. So there's a general sense of this word sounds cliche. Hope. I don't know. There was like a feeling of hope or optimism. Maybe that's a better word. That's less cliche. Optimism. But yeah, I'm me personally, I'm still waiting to see some things. But there are some things that I feel impressed by. The rent freeze was cool, and then I feel like just in the true politician manner, and then within like the next week, he opened up this system of pet owners getting free food for their pets. And it was just like, oh, you pulling and strumming on all the heartstrings right now. But still, like, make buses free and take that Zionist out of the being the commissioner of NYPD.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I
Yep.
was going to say, speaking of politics and the song, speaking of that, in the song "Politricks," perfect
Come
segue.
on, Segway. Let's go. Let's go,
It's all
Segway.
coming together. What it just said, it's all happening.
Yeah.
Shout out to Justin Hunt. In the song "Politricks," your verse includes the following. It's that you said that people be shouting for revolution, running in place with no evolution. Want the resolve with no retribution. Scared of the sin but want absolution. What's absolute is now is time for no fear. Fuck the views, I'm talking about coups, and all those in power beware. Are we ready for war? Killer whale all these billionaires. First and foremost, bars, by the way. Now listen.
Thank you. That was nice to hear my bars read back to me. I don't think that's ever happened. That was great.
He was like, wait, I wrote
Yeah, hold on. Who wrote that shit? That shit sounds good.
that?
Yeah.
I was gonna just ask. It's obvious where your stance is lying in with these, and then so it's just like, what were the events? What were the events that inspired these lyrics? Because it kind of made me think about like 2020, for instance, of
Mm,
just like the fervor that came from the protests and how that rage. Shout out to Bat Comrade Two Black was laundered to
mm,
serve the interests of the empire, basically. That's what
mm-hmm.
I was thinking when I went into like this. What were those moments that made you feel like y'all say you want revolution, but the organizing needed both above and underground for that revolution, y'all seem to be a little hesitant about.
You actually spoke about it when we about Spotify and the PS5 and Qobuz not being on there and the big word, right? Convenience, comfort. Excuse me. That it felt like we're seeing all these things and it's more contemporary. Yes, around. I mean, we saw the wave in 2020. We saw the general community and like unofficial like mutual aid happening in 2020, right? When things were locked down and there was this important need to come together. And there was this everybody couldn't run and hide. We watched 9 minutes of George Floyd be murdered. We watched this trial and the events around Breonna Taylor or and the Tony McDade and black trans man killed by the police. We saw and there was still so much happening, right? Like those were the big ones that made the international headlines or national headlines. George Floyd definitely internationally, obviously, but like, and then we saw once the world quote unquote opened up again, and we could get back into our comfort zones. We could be distracted, happily distracted again. That things did fade. Our fervor faded. Our fire waned. We weren't breathing oxygen into it. That fire waned a bit, but also more contemporarily. You could see the waves. There was a lot of wave and push around movement for Palestinian solidarity and a liberated Palestine, but also maybe like the election. I really hated the aftermath when Kamala Harris didn't win, and people were like, "Well, see, this is why we could have y'all did it wrong. We did," and it was just kind of like y'all missing the point. Y'all are really missing the point here with how we're supposed to move and the discomfort that's supposed to happen before the next round of growth and change happens. And obviously, it's very clear. We say what inspired it was fucking these beautiful organized movements of orca sinking yachts. They're intelligent beings, and they weren't going after the little fishermen's boats. They weren't going after, just the person out on the sea in a kayak. They were going after these polluters, these destroyers of space, of these rich ruling class symbols of wealth and dominance and oppression. It was beautiful. I mean, it's literal and it's also a metaphor, to kill away all these billionaires. But it is like,
Mother
let's,
Nature take it back. Take itself back.
yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, it's also a self analysis because there's the running in place with no evolution. That may be a line that is also, I mean, it's for all, but it's also maybe a self-reflective. Like, how are we moving here? How am I moving? How am I, what's really happening? What change am I really affecting in the here and now? And at that point, in the there, in the then and now, or the here and then, I guess I should say. But it is critical of others because, and that was also scared of the sin but want absolution, or want the resolve and no retribution. The concept that like still people being on a bit of the like non-violent tip and violence being much broader than just physical violence or military or militaristic violence, and how to respond to violence that is happening in exorbitantly high rent costs, in dirty, um, duplicitous, scamming, predatory landlords. Like that's a violence that's happening with the inflation, the cost of food, the food deserts, the inability to get a nutritious food. That is a violence. The education system completely siphoning a certain amount of information and knowledge out, right? That's violence. And what are we really willing to do there to take it back?
No, and if a lot of folks aren't trying to take it back, Mother Nature will take it back for herself.
Absolutely.
Soon as
Absolutely.
we possibly can. And I'm glad you brought up Palestine too, because I can recall like I'm actually not just Palestine, but the elections as well, because I know what kind of conversations you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
after Kamala lost and Trump had started about to start a second term. The blaming of like the revolutionaries and the leftists. It's like, or even just folks who are just pro Palestine. They're just anti genocide. And that
Mm-hmm.
just took either prevented them from voting
Yep.
or they just voted third party. They were like, see, that's
Mm-hmm.
the problem. If y'all didn't vote for third party, or just didn't, or y'all just did, if y'all didn't hold the genocide so high up, we would have we'd be at dinner, we'd be at brunch right now,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
would
God. Oh,
and
I hated
I
that. Oh, I hated that.
if Kamala was here, we'd be at brunch. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I would talk with my friends. I'm like, y'all. I'm like, you say, oh, Kamala would be here. Kamala would be here. We'd be at brunch. I'm like, you mean the brunches that you wouldn't be invited to?
Word.
You'd be
Facts.
you having brunch outside the door. You are outside the entranceway on
Yeah.
the anti-homeless architecture, eating
Oof.
brunch. Eating
Oof.
brunch. You think you go into them
Right.
all white parties
Uh-huh. Yeah.
with the tycoons and the
Hell no.
CEOs and
Hell
the
no.
A-list celebrities, the petty bourgeois? No, you're not. You're
Yeah.
not having brunch. You're not gonna
Yeah.
have brunch. It's gonna be the same thing like it was with Obama and it was with Biden that it was with Clinton. with,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Bill Clinton in the last few years of his life, he's proudly talking about and John Lewis, what the little I think the funeral they had for John Lewis, he was like, oh, there's a
Mm-hmm.
moment where you were turn into a Stokely Carmichael, but I'm glad you didn't go that route or anything like that. I'm like, you can say that now. You feel
Mm.
comfortable saying that live on TV.
I didn't know that, and I'm glad I didn't hear that until right now because that's
It was
fucking
like so I didn't
preposterous.
verbatim. I'm paraphrasing
Yeah,
what he said.
yeah,
Oh, John Lewis almost became like a Stokely Carmichael, basically. And even Stokely had to evolve. I had to recently. So even Stokely was
yeah,
evolving his analysis over time because
yeah.
Stokely and Kwame, two different people,
Right,
or
I'm about to
same
say,
same. Yeah,
and you dead named him at that. It's like, come on, like,
yeah.
yeah,
but
jeez,
but yeah, but
yeah.
just the bonus question. These last set of questions. This bonus
Hmm.
question for the verse. What would you say is the greatest obstacle in creating this kind of revolutionary art, and even just consuming revolutionary art as well? What would you say are the greatest
Mm.
challenges to being able to do so?
Creating and consuming revolutionary art. I know it's been a theme in this conversation and in conversations I've been having with others and myself, my own internal dialogue around the nuance is that we forget that sometimes we forget that gray area and the nuance and we're expecting sometimes the revolutionary art to answer questions, but I think that sometimes the most powerful thing that it can do is ask questions and make the observer sit with those questions and answer them for themselves, and also in dialogue with others in community answer certain questions. Because I don't think that me and Jenna enjoy discussing politics, and we have a little like peer interview style video we're going to put out soon. Jenna often felt that we were not like kind of disagreeing in our methods of revolutionary action. And I thought that we weren't disagreeing, but we were just still looking at the same destination with slightly different action plans. But I think that that's okay because if the destination is the same and we know that this is a process where many people are going to be involved on many fronts, that means that there are many paths to get there. I think that so leaving room for the questions to be asked to allow nuance and allow room for the bad idea or the wrong idea or maybe the idea that won't get us there, but the space to like ruminate because nobody, if any of these groups and people and individuals that we like to prop up, if any of them had the answer, we would be in a different place right now. And that's not to say like that's not to negate the very clear obstacles and oppressors and violence that's happening against these movements very clearly. And with the advent of technology and surveillance being what it is, like in a lot of senses we're meeting new ops and obstacles, right? But at the same time, it's like you ain't got the answer, Sway. Nobody, no one person, no one person has all the answers yet. That's why we're still in this process of figuring out. We know, yes, we know some very clear ways to be subversive, to push back, to fight back, but we don't have the answers exactly yet. And creating it is nuance. Ask the questions, answer the questions for yourselves, and leave room for the fact that like nothing is perfect. Things are flawed, and that's okay. But there's something to learn in all of the attempts and all of the victories and all of the losses. There's a lot to learn still.
Oh, that's a beautiful answer. And we are down to our very last question. I asked this about, or asked this for everybody I interview with the magazine,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts with the Frantz Fanon. He mentions in his work, "Wretched of the Earth," that each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it in relative opacity. What do you
Mm-hmm.
see as Gen Z's mission? How do you think we are fulfilling it, if we are at all, and how much are we betraying it? Or has this, or you can, it's also changed to younger generations if you don't identify with Gen Z as well. Do you feel like we're fulfilling the mission that was supposed to be, that was presented to us? Are we betraying it? Are we lost? What are your thoughts?
As the quote says, the kids are all right. I think that Gen Z, Gen Alpha are absolutely fulfilling the mission. And these are obviously generalizations. And I think that, right, obviously not all technology is bad or evil. I think that the younger generations, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, are really finding the ways to make it work for them, make it work for all of us, right? Like at the core foundation of all, if you study any social, political, revolutionary movement across time and space anywhere in the globe, the youth have been a powerful center, a powerful core and catalyst for those movements. As an aside, I feel like Hollywood, Judas and the Black Messiah, I feel like did Fred Hampton a disservice. Did the people a disservice having grown ass Daniel Kaluuya play him? He was 21 when they assassinated him. He was 21. He was almost he was and not to he was almost a kid still. So much of the work that he did, the organizing work, he was a teenager. It's incredible. So I think that these younger generations are doing awesomely. I'm inspired by them. And like I said, with the technology, they have a certain, it's hard because some of my students, and like I said, it's an alternative high school, and there's some really, alternative thinkers. I'm always surprised sometimes by their phones. They implemented last year the first time that they had to put at this school in particular, they had to check their phones in when they came in, which was also hilarious because they would just so a lot of them would just check in a phone that they weren't using anyway and just keep their own phone and be using it throughout the day. But it would be funny to me because they have the world in their hand. And this is poetry, but it's also kind of the truth. They could go on Google Maps and hit a live Google Maps and be like at a park in Korea, in South Korea. Like they could hit a hiking trail in South Africa. They could like almost literally be around the world. They could Google or a better search engine than Google. They could research a lot of things. But it was interesting for my students how kind of tapped out they were with how much they could access knowledge, information, but obviously also using critical thinking to get so much access to the world through their phone. But the people who I see really engaged on social media, the young people, they have found a way to make it an incredibly educational tool. And another big concept that I think about in my life, in my activism, in my art is, James Baldwin spoke a lot about Black people needing to excavate their history and their stories, right? This digging, this mining, Audre Lorde also refers to as mining. You have to dig in to get this thing that has been covered up. I feel like the young people are doing a great job of shining lights on all of these dark places that I know that I had to really dig before, even before AOL and the dial-up internet came, that we had an encyclopedia set in my house. I had, people I had to ask. I had big brothers who were passing music and knowledge and information to me. We were at the library. We had to go really get it. And the same thing, to be fair, like you have to be on the right streets on the internet, right? You got to go on the right avenues on the internet to still get to be in a certain corner of the internet to get the information, right? But I'm seeing that young people are completely fulfilling the mission. I was in the beauty supply store yesterday with my partner. They was getting a wig for something, and these three young well, from their conversation, like these three young women walked in, and just as they walked in, they were in mid conversation, and they said the conversation started with, as they walked in, oh, I misgendered them right to their face, but I corrected myself quickly. Three young Black women right on Utica Ave over here in my neighborhood. I misgendered them, but I fixed it quickly. And then another said, yeah, because what are her pronouns, or what are their pronouns? Their pronouns are they, them, right? Yeah, okay. And as I was walking past, I said something to the extent of like, that's great. Y'all are doing a really good job. Keep it up. And they were a little confused, and they were like very kind. They said, wait, are you talking to us? I said, yeah, those are really important conversations that you're having, and I'm really proud of you for having them. And they just like beamed. But it's like they were young. They had to be mid, 14, 15, 16 years old. And I wasn't having those conversations at 14, 15, 16 years old. I didn't have this access and the open-mindedness. That even sounds dull, but like the open-heartedness, the humanity to make this space to understand things that are going on in the world that may not be their experience, especially in this neighborhood where this is the neighborhood I'm talking about. I got to walk down, I got to dodge landmines on my own street. This is the same neighborhood where I'm still getting the scowls and people not fully accepting of who I am and want to, put vitriol out at me. And those conversations that I'm seeing young people having and engaging with, powerful. And in 2020, the last thing I say, some of the stuff that I was learning at 2020, some of the people handing out protective gear, masks, glasses, Pepto-Bismol solutions for the pepper spray that was being sprayed out all the time were some of my students from my school. I was seeing my students out there. I was learning ways to combat this stuff from my students, So nah, man, the kids are all right. The kids are all right. And I'm just hoping that, they keep it up. And it's also still our job. It's my job as an educator. It's one of the most revolutionary things that I feel like I'm doing in my activism is to be an educator and to help instill and refine methods of critical thinking. And a big thing that's informed my pedagogy and how I show up. I can't remember where the quote was from, but showing students where to look, but not telling them what to see. And so I'll point you in a direction, but I'm not going to tell you what to see. And hopefully the critical thinking that I'm helping them build is going to help them see what they need to see.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Kala, I want to get your name right again. Kala.
Kala. It's like Haya.
Kala.
Kala. Yep.
Yeah, Kala. I want to double Kala. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for taking the time to interview with us at Column Conscious. Please, y'all, like, share, subscribe to the channel, support Yansa magazine as we keep trying to reach our goals to eventually get our first physical copy of the magazine. Support independent media, support Black radical media. Please listen again. I will say this one more time. Listen to Colors. It's a dope project.
Thank you.
I'm Dominic Bush, and that is the end of the show. Peace.